Hey girl, Halloween was last month. Officer Caleb Whitmore blocks Victoria Washington's path to the Montgomery Police Department entrance. His tobacco-stained grin spreads wide as he looks her up and down like she's wearing a costume. Victoria stands tall in her perfectly pressed uniform, badge gleaming in the Alabama morning sun. Sweat beads on her forehead, but her expression remains composed. "Real cops don't look like you, sweetheart." Whitmore taps his Confederate flag pin, then deliberately brushes past her shoulder, forcing her to step back. "Maybe try the McDonald's down the street. They're hiring." A cluster of morning commuters stops to watch. Phones come out. Some people laugh. Others record in uncomfortable silence. Victoria's hands remain clasped behind her back, her training keeping her professional despite the burning humiliation. The same courthouse steps where Rosa Parks was sentenced loom behind them. Have you ever been judged so completely that someone couldn't see your worth? Montgomery, Alabama sprawls under the weight of history and humidity. Confederate monuments dot the landscape like reminders of an unfinished conversation. The scent of magnolia blossoms mingles with exhaust fumes as morning commuters navigate streets that once witnessed freedom marchers and police dogs. The Montgomery Police Department building stands like a fortress of red brick and tradition. Built in 1952, its cornerstone bears the inscription, "To Protect and Serve," alongside a smaller, weathered plaque honoring Confederate veterans of Alabama. American and state flags hang limply in the still air, while a third pole displays the thin blue line banner. Inside the building, portraits of past chiefs line the hallway, a gallery of stern white faces stretching back 7 decades. Not a single black face among them. The coffee room bulletin board showcases Heritage Pride stickers and retirement party photos where officers pose with Confederate memorabilia. This is Officer Caleb Whitmore's domain, and he knows every corner of it. Whitmore comes from Montgomery police royalty. His great-great-grandfather helped found the department in 1888. His grandfather served as sheriff during the turbulent 1960s, earning a reputation for maintaining order during civil rights demonstrations. His father retired as lieutenant with a service record that raised eyebrows but never quite triggered investigations. The Confederate flag pin on Whitmore's collar isn't just decoration, it's identity. He wears it like armor against a changing world. His social media feeds overflow with Blue Lives Matter posts, heritage not hate memes, and carefully worded complaints about outside agitators and federal overreach. Diaunchi. To him, being a Montgomery police officer means protecting tradition, and tradition has always meant knowing your place. His patrol car bears the department motto, honor, integrity, service, but everyone knows the real rules. Stop quotas mysteriously focus on certain neighborhoods. Traffic violations seem to multiply near the projects. Officer Whitmore has perfected the art of legal harassment. His stops are technically legitimate. His searches justified by suspicious behavior. His reports meticulously worded to avoid liability. The statistics tell the story. In a county that's 60% black, Whitmore's arrest record runs 90% African American. His use of force reports spike whenever he works the evening shift in predominantly black districts. But the numbers get buried in bureaucracy, lost in union negotiations, explained away by supervisors who share his worldview. Victoria Washington represents everything Whitmore fears about modern America. She's the granddaughter of sharecroppers who dared to march for voting rights. Her grandfather faced police dogs and fire hoses on these same streets. Her father broke barriers as Birmingham's first black detective in 1975, enduring death threats and vandalized patrol cars throughout his career. Victoria grew up hearing stories of police brutality disguised as law enforcement. She learned early that badges don't automatically command respect. They must earn it through service, not intimidation. Her Harvard law dissertation examined the psychological profiles of officers who abuse their authority. She knows Whitmore's type before she meets him. 22 years of law enforcement taught Victoria that real change happens from within institutions, not outside them. She worked her way up through Atlanta PD, earned federal recognition for community policing innovations, and specialized in hate crime investigations. When the Department of Justice mandated reform in Montgomery, she volunteered for the hardest job in American policing, transforming a department built on exclusion. The irony isn't lost on her. Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat just 4 blocks from where Victoria now stands. The courthouse where civil rights lawyers argued desegregation cases looms across the square. History has a sense of humor, bringing the great-granddaughter of cotton pickers back to lead the sons of overseers. Federal oversight hangs over the department like storm clouds. 3 years of excessive force complaints and discrimination lawsuits finally triggered Justice Department intervention. The consent decree demands immediate reform, diverse hiring, bias training, community oversight, and new leadership. Victoria's appointment represents the federal government's ultimatum to Montgomery: change or face dissolution. The morning sun climbs higher, casting long shadows across the courthouse square. Street vendors set up American flag displays for the tourist buses that arrive daily to tour civil rights landmarks. The Rosa Parks Museum advertises guided tours of historic Montgomery. But real history isn't behind museum glass. It's unfolding right now, in real time, on the same streets where freedom riders bled for justice. Officer Whitmore doesn't know that his worldview is about to collide with evolution. He sees a black woman in uniform and assumes she doesn't belong. He sees tradition under threat and reaches for familiar weapons: intimidation, humiliation, the casual cruelty of unchecked authority. What he doesn't see is that the woman standing before him carries the dreams of 3 generations on her shoulders and the power of the federal government in her pocket. Whitmore plants himself squarely in Victoria's path, his thumbs hooked in his duty belt. The morning sun gleams off his badge as he rocks back on his heels, savoring the moment. His radio crackles with dispatcher chatter, but he ignores it. This is more entertaining. "You lost, sweetheart?" His voice carries across the parking lot, drawing glances from passing officers. "The costume shop's on Dexter Avenue." Victoria stops 3 feet away, close enough to smell the tobacco on his breath and see the Confederate flag pin gleaming on his collar. Her hands remain clasped behind her back, military style. Her voice stays level. "I'm here for work, officer." "Work?" Whitmore's laugh is sharp and mocking. He turns to wave over Officer Billy Ray Cooper, who's climbing out of his patrol car. "Billy Ray, you see this? We got ourselves in a situation here." Cooper ambles over, his gut straining against his uniform shirt. Coffee stains dot his chest, and his radio squawks unattended. At 32, he's already earned a reputation for aggressive stops and creative report writing. His grin matches Whitmore's energy. "What did we get, Caleb?" "The lady here thinks she's the police." Whitmore circles Victoria slowly, like a shark testing prey. Real fancy uniforms, too. Wonder where she stole it from. Victoria's jaw tightens slightly, but her posture remains perfect. She knows this dance. Every black officer learns it eventually, the ritual humiliation, the public theater of disrespect. The key is not to react, not to give them what they want. "I need to speak with Chief Morrison," she says clearly. "It's official business." "Official business." Whitmore repeats her words like they're foreign languages. "Chief Morrison don't talk to people like you unless you're getting arrested." More officers begin gathering. The shift change brings a steady stream of cars into the lot, and word spreads quickly through the ranks. Tommy Jenkins, a 15-year veteran with dead eyes and scarred knuckles, joins the circle. So does Officer Mike Stevens, whose excessive force complaints read like a horror story. "She claims to be police," Whitmore announces to his growing audience. "Any y'all ever seen her before?" My head shakes all around. Murmurs of amusement. Someone snaps a photo with their phone. Victoria recognizes the dynamic immediately. This isn't about her credentials or her business here. This is about power, territory, and the oldest game in American policing, putting the others in their place. Her grandfather faced similar circles in 1965. Her father endured them in 1975. Now it's her turn in 2025. Officer Whitmore, she says, reading his name tag, I'm asking you to verify my credentials through dispatch. That's standard procedure. Standard procedure? Whitmore's voice rises to a mock falsetto. Listen to her, boys. Sounds like she's been watching too much TV. The laughter spreads through the gathered officers. Someone makes a comment about uppity behavior that draws more chuckles. Victoria catalogs every face, every badge number. This will all go in her report. A few civilian witnesses stop on the sidewalk. An elderly black woman clutches her purse tighter and hurries past. Two white businessmen pause to watch, one pulling out his phone to record. The morning commute becomes street theater. You know what I think? Whitmore steps closer, invading Victoria's personal space. I think you ordered this costume online. Amazon, maybe eBay. Figured you'd play dress-up, see what happens. The uniform is regulation, Victoria replies. Issued by the state. Issued by the state? Cooper mimics her precise diction. Damn, she's good. Real professional sounding. Professional, Jenkins echoes. Must have watched a lot of cop shows. The circle tightens. 6 officers now, all white, all following Whitmore's lead. Victoria finds herself at the center of a human wall, blocked from the building entrance. The Confederate monument across the street seems to loom larger, casting its shadow over the scene. Whitmore keys his radio with theatrical flair. Dispatch, this is Unit 247. I need a supervisor in the main parking lot. We got into a situation with someone impersonating an officer. The radio response crackles back immediately. Copy that, 247. Supervisor en route. There we go, Whitmore grins. Now we'll get this sorted out proper-like. Victoria calculates her options. She could end this immediately by revealing her identity and federal appointment. But doing so would undermine the element of surprise the mayor wanted to maintain. More importantly, she needs to see how deep the rot goes, how many officers will participate in obvious harassment. While we wait, Whitmore continues, maybe you can explain where you got that badge. Looks mighty real from here. He reaches toward her chest, fingers aiming for her badge. Victoria steps back smoothly. Don't touch me, officer. Don't touch you? Whitmore's voice drips with fake astonishment. Ma'am, I'm trying to verify your credentials. That's my job. Your job is to serve and protect, Victoria replies, not to harass citizens in parking lots. Citizens, Stephen spits into the gravel. That's rich. The crowd on the sidewalk grows larger. More phones come out. Someone starts live streaming on social media. The hashtags begin forming in real time. Hashtag Montgomery PD, police brutality, WTF. Captain Frank Morrison's white sedan pulls into the lot, emergency lights flashing. The 30-year veteran climbs out slowly, his belly preceding him by several inches. Morrison represents the old guard, the generation that fought integration tooth and nail, then adapted just enough to survive federal oversight. What's the problem here, Whitmore? Got ourselves an impersonator, Captain, claims to be police. Morrison looks Victoria up and down with barely concealed contempt. His expression suggests she's something unpleasant he stepped in. You got ID, girl? Victoria produces her credentials, federal law enforcement identification, state certification, department transfer orders. Morrison examines them with exaggerated skepticism, turning each document over multiple times. These look fake to me, he announces. Real professional job, but fake all the same. The gathered officers nod approval. Some crack jokes about Hollywood props and crisis actors. Victoria realizes she's witnessing more than casual bias. This is coordinated resistance to change, institutional racism disguised as law enforcement. Sir, those documents are authentic, Victoria says. You can verify them through federal channels. Federal channels? Morrison hands the papers back dismissively. Don't tell me how to do my job, girl. Been wearing this badge since before you were born. The civilian crowd buzzes with tension. An older black man recognizes the dynamics and pulls out his phone to call his pastor. A young white woman starts a Facebook live stream. The morning news van from Channel 8 turns the corner, drawn by social media alerts. Victoria knows she's reached a decision point. She can continue this charade and gather more evidence of systematic corruption, or she can end it before it escalates to physical confrontation. The history of Montgomery police suggests they won't stop at verbal harassment. "Captain Morrison," she says formally, "I'm ordering you to verify my credentials through proper channels." "Ordering?" Morrison's face turns red. "You're ordering me?" The officer's close ranks are tighter. Hands drift toward weapons. The crowd of civilians backs away, sensing violence in the air. This is how it always starts. With words, then escalation, then excuses afterward. Whitmore keys his radio again. "Dispatch, we're gonna need that wagon after all. Got us in an arrestable situation developing." Victoria stands perfectly still, knowing that any sudden movement could trigger the response they're looking for. She's walked into the spider's web of institutional racism, and now she has to decide whether to reveal her power or let them hang themselves with their own prejudice. The Montgomery heat builds toward its daily crescendo. Sweat beads on every face. The Confederate monument casts its shadow longer. History watches and waits to see if the past will repeat itself, or if this time will be different. The transport wagon arrives with theatrical flair, sirens wailing unnecessarily. Officer Derek Walsh climbs out, handcuffs jangling from his belt. His arrival signals the point of no return. What started as harassment now becomes arrest theater. "All right, let's make this easy," Whitmore announces loudly, playing to his growing audience. "Ma'am, you're going to remove that stolen uniform right here, right now, or you're going to jail for impersonating an officer." Victoria's voice remains steady despite the absurdity. "Officer Whitmore, I'm a sworn law enforcement officer. These are my legitimate credentials." "Legitimate." Captain Morrison spits the word like poison. "Nothing legitimate about people like you wearing our uniform." The crowd of officers spreads wider, creating a human arena. Victoria counts 8 now, all white, all male, all feeding off Whitmore's energy. Their body language screams aggression, chests puffed out, hands near weapons, feet planted in combat stance. "Here's what's gonna happen," Whitmore continues, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "You're gonna face that wall, hands behind your back, while I search you for weapons and whatever else you got hidden under that costume." "I refuse," Victoria states clearly. "You have no probable cause for a search." "Probable cause?" Cooper laughs harshly. "Lady, you're wearing a police uniform illegally. That's all the probable cause we need in Alabama." The civilian crowd has swelled to nearly 30 people. Phones record from every angle. The Channel 8 news van parks at the lot's edge. Camera crew scrambling to set up equipment. Social media engagement explodes as live streams multiply across platforms. "Turn around," Whitmore orders, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. "Hands on that patrol car. Now!" Victoria doesn't move. She knows this playbook. Once she complies with the illegal search, they'll claim she resisted, then escalate to force. The script writes itself. The subject became combative during routine investigation. "I said turn around!" Whitmore's shout echoes off the brick buildings. An elderly black woman on the sidewalk calls out, "Leave that girl alone! She ain't done nothing!" "Ma'am, step back or you'll be arrested for interfering," Jenkins warns, moving toward the civilian crowd with his hand on his baton. The woman, Mrs. Ruby Jefferson, age 73, doesn't budge. She lived through the original civil rights movement. She recognizes theater when she sees it. "I have a right to stand on this public sidewalk. This is America." "Not your America," Stevens mutters, but his words carry on the morning air. Victoria watches the scene expand beyond her individual situation. This is how movements begin, with one person standing up, then others finding courage to join. Her grandfather would recognize this moment. "Last warning," Whitmore announces, pulling handcuffs from his belt with a metallic click. "Turn around and assume the position, or I'll put you down myself." "Put her down!" echoes through the crowd of officers like a prayer response. The language of violence becomes normalized, casual, expected. Victoria's training kicks in. She mentally catalogs every threat, every violation, every witness. This will all matter later, in courtrooms and congressional hearings. But right now, she has to survive the encounter. "Officer Whitmore," she says formally, "I'm placing you on notice that your actions are being recorded by multiple witnesses. You're violating my civil rights under federal law." "Civil rights," Morrison laughs bitterly. "Hear that, boys? She knows about civil rights." The historical irony is overwhelming. They're standing blocks from where Rosa Parks was arrested, where freedom riders were beaten, where police dogs attacked children. The same courthouse that sentenced civil rights heroes looms over this modern-day confrontation. Whitmore steps closer, invading Victoria's personal space completely. His breath reeks of tobacco and morning coffee. Sweat stains spread under his arms despite the early hour. "You know what your problem is?" His voice drops to a whisper meant only for her ears. "You forgot your place. But don't worry, I'm going to remind you." The threat is clear, personal, loaded with generational hatred. Victoria feels the weight of every black officer who faced similar moments, who had to choose between dignity and safety, between principle and survival. "Step back, officer," she replies quietly. "You're close enough to be considered assault." "Assault?" Whitmore's voice rises again, playing for the crowd. "She's threatening me now. Y'all heard that she threatened a police officer." The lie spreads through the circle of officers like wildfire. Heads nod, hands move to weapons. The narrative shifts from harassment to officer safety. This is how police reports get written, how justifications get manufactured. Walsh approaches with zip-tie restraints, the plastic kind that leave permanent scars if applied too tightly. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for impersonating an officer, threatening a police officer, and disorderly conduct." "I haven't committed any crimes," Victoria states for the recording phones. "This is unlawful arrest based on racial bias." "Racial bias," Stevens repeats mockingly. There she goes, playing the race card. The civilian crowd stirs restlessly. Some shout support for Victoria. Others film silently, understanding they're witnessing history. A few white onlookers nod approval at the officer's actions, their faces showing the ugly satisfaction of prejudice confirmed. Mrs. Jefferson's voice rises above the noise. "Y'all should be ashamed. This is exactly how they treated us in 1955. 1955 was different," Morrison calls back. "We knew how to handle troublemakers back then." The admission hangs in the air like smoke. He's just confessed to generational continuity of oppression, to institutional memory that passes racism from father to son, from veteran officer to rookie recruit. Reverend Marcus King arrives, alerted by his congregation's phone calls. At 58, he carries the moral authority of the civil rights movement and the political savvy of modern activism. His presence changes the energy immediately. "Officers, what seems to be the problem here?" His voice carries the trained cadence of Sunday sermons and protest speeches. "No problem, preacher," Whitmore responds with fake courtesy. "Just handling some police business." "This doesn't look like police business," Reverend King observes, pulling out his own phone to record. "This looks like harassment." The news crew finishes setting up, camera rolling live. The reporter speaks into her microphone. "We're witnessing what appears to be a confrontation between Montgomery police and an unidentified black woman in uniform." Victoria realizes the moment has reached critical mass. Every second of delay adds to the evidence of systematic harassment, but every second also increases the danger of physical violence. These officers have painted themselves into a corner they must follow through with arrest or admit their actions were baseless. Whitmore produces a throwaway knife from his pocket, the kind sold at gas stations for $2. Well, looky here. Found this on the ground right where she was standing. That's a weapon, boys. The plant job is so obvious it's insulting. Victoria didn't drop anything, hasn't moved from her position, and the knife clearly came from Whitmore's pocket. But it doesn't matter. The lie becomes the truth in the police report. That's evidence tampering, Victoria says loudly, for all the recording devices. You just planted that knife. She's getting agitated, Walsh announces. Better call for backup. More sirens wail in the distance. The parking lot fills with flashing lights as additional units respond to the manufactured emergency. Each new arrival brings another officer ready to support the narrative, another witness willing to lie in court. The heat builds toward Montgomery's daily furnace. Asphalt softens underfoot. Sweat drips from every face. The Confederate monument seems to grow taller, casting longer shadows across the scene. Victoria makes her calculation. She can end this immediately by revealing her identity, but doing so will stop the exposure of systematic corruption. Or she can endure whatever comes next, trusting that the recording devices will preserve the truth. She thinks of Rosa Parks, who faced similar calculations 70 years ago. She thinks of her grandfather, who chose dignity over safety. She thinks of all the black officers who never had the power to fight back. "Ma'am, last chance," Whitmore announces, handcuffs open and ready. "You're gonna cooperate, or do we have to do this the hard way?" The crowd holds its collective breath. History waits for her answer. Whitmore reaches for Victoria's arm, handcuffs glinting in the Alabama sun. The crowd leans forward, sensing the climactic moment. Camera phones focus tighter. The news reporter adjusts her position for the best angle of what appears to be inevitable arrest. "You're under arrest for impersonating a police officer," Whitmore announces with theatrical authority. His fingers close around Victoria's wrist. Victoria's voice cuts through the morning air like a blade. "Officer Whitmore, release my arm immediately." Something in her tone stops him cold. The voice that had remained calm and measured throughout the harassment suddenly carries the unmistakable weight of command authority. Every cop in the circle recognizes it instinctively, the voice of someone who gives orders, not takes them. "I am Chief Victoria Washington, Montgomery Police Department." Each word drops like a hammer blow. "I was appointed by federal order and sworn in yesterday evening." The parking lot falls silent except for the hum of air conditioners and distant traffic. Whitmore's grip loosens involuntarily. His face drains of color as the words register. That's impossible," he stammers, backing away. "Chief Morrison is our chief." Victoria pulls her federal appointment papers from her breast pocket, documents that Morrison had dismissed as fake 30 minutes earlier. Her voice now carries the full weight of institutional authority. "Chief Morrison was relieved of duty at midnight. I assume command effective immediately under Department of Justice oversight." Captain Morrison's coffee cup slips from his fingers, shattering on the asphalt. Brown liquid spreads across the pavement like spilled blood. His mouth opens and closes soundlessly, a fish gasping for air. What federal order?" he croaks. Victoria's radio crackles to life. She keys the microphone with practiced efficiency. "Dispatch, this is Chief Washington. Badge number 001. Confirm my authority and command status." The response comes immediately, crisp and official. "Confirmed, Chief Washington. Montgomery PD is under your command as of 0001 hours today." The crowd of officers shuffles backward like they've been struck by lightning. Whispered curses float through the morning air. Someone's equipment belt rattles as hands shake uncontrollably. "This has to be some kind of setup," Whitmore insists, his voice cracking. "Some federal conspiracy thing." Mayor Patricia Webb's black sedan rounds the corner, emergency lights flashing. She steps out in a crisp business suit, her expression mixing satisfaction with barely contained anger. At 45, She represents Montgomery's new generation, educated, progressive, and fed up with the old ways. "Officers," Mayor Webb announces, approaching the circle, "allow me to introduce Chief Victoria Washington, appointed under federal consent decree to reform this department." The civilian crowd erupts in cheers and applause. Mrs. Ruby Jefferson raises her hands toward heaven, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Lord have mercy, I lived to see the day." Reverend King begins a slow clap that spreads through the gathering. "Justice," he calls out. "Justice at last." Social media explodes in real time. The live streams that had documented police harassment now capture the most dramatic reversal in Montgomery's modern history. Hashtags shift from #police brutality to #justice, served within minutes. Victoria turns to address her officers because they are her officers now, whether they like it or not. Her voice carries across the parking lot with calm authority. "Gentlemen, you have just provided me with the most comprehensive demonstration of this department's problems that I could have asked for." Whitmore tries one desperate gambit. "Chief, ma'am, I was just doing my job. Protecting the department from..." "From what, Officer Whitmore?" Victoria's interruption is surgical. "From a qualified law enforcement professional? From someone who doesn't look like your expectation of authority?" The planted knife still lies on the asphalt where Whitmore dropped it. Victoria points to the evidence with clinical precision. "That knife you planted will be submitted to Internal Affairs along with all the recording devices capturing this encounter." She gestures toward the crowd of phones. "Every violation of my civil rights, every illegal search demand, every threat of violence, all documented. Captain Morrison attempts damage control. Chief Washington, if there's been a misunderstanding..." "The only misunderstanding, Captain, is your assumption that federal oversight was optional." Victoria's words cut deep. "You're suspended pending investigation. Badge and weapons. Now." Morrison's hands shake as he fumbles with his badge. 30 years of service, a pension months away from vesting, a reputation built over decades, all crumbling in the Alabama heat. The other officers stand frozen, unsure whether to run or surrender. Some look ready to vomit. Others stare at their feet, suddenly fascinated by their polished boots. Victoria keys her radio again. "Dispatch, I need Internal Affairs and Federal liaisons to respond to headquarters immediately. Priority 1. "Copy that, Chief. Units en route." The Channel 8 reporter steps forward with her microphone. "Chief Washington, how do you respond to what just happened here?" Victoria faces the camera with the composure of someone who has carried this moment in her heart for decades. Behind her, the Confederate monument seems smaller somehow, diminished by the presence of real authority. "What happened here represents exactly why federal intervention became necessary," she states clearly. "This department will be reformed from the ground up. Every officer will be retrained, reevaluated, and held to constitutional standards." She turns back to Whitmore, who stands handcuffed by his own actions, trapped by his own prejudice. "Officer Whitmore, you are suspended without pay pending a federal investigation. Your badge, weapon, and credentials, immediately." The crowd watches in stunned silence as Whitmore fumbles with his equipment belt. The Confederate flag pin falls from his collar, landing in the same puddle as Morrison's spilled coffee. History has just reversed course in a Montgomery parking lot, and everyone present knows they witnessed something unprecedented. Whitmore's hands tremble as he unfastens his badge, the metal warm from the Alabama sun. 23 years of wearing it with pride, and now it feels like lead in his palm. His voice cracks as he attempts one final, pathetic defense. "Chief Washington, please. I didn't know who you were. I was just protecting the department like I was trained to do." Victoria accepts his badge with clinical detachment, her fingers not touching his. "Protecting the department from what, Officer Whitmore? From accountability, from change, from someone who doesn't fit your narrow definition of authority." "From outsiders," he whispers, the word escaping before he can stop it. The admission hangs in the morning air like smoke from a fire. Civilian phones capture every syllable. The news crew's microphone picks up his confession of exactly the mindset that brought federal oversight to Montgomery. Outsiders. Victoria repeats the word slowly, letting it echo. I was born 30 miles from here, Officer Whitmore. My family has lived in Alabama for 6 generations. The only outsider here is the mentality you represent. Captain Morrison shuffles forward, his weapon belt jangling like shackles. Sweat streams down his red face despite the morning hour. His badge comes off reluctantly, 30 years of authority stripped away in seconds. This is all happening too fast, he mumbles. There's procedures, union protocols, due process. Due process? Victoria's voice carries across the parking lot. Where was due process when you dismissed my federal credentials as fake? Where was due process when you allowed an illegal search demand? Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell arrives in her patrol car, drawn by the radio chatter and social media alerts. At 38, she represents the department's small progressive faction officers who joined to serve communities, not control them. Her face shows a mixture of relief and vindication as she surveys the scene. Lieutenant Mitchell, Victoria calls out, please escort these suspended officers off the property. Their access cards are revoked immediately. Yes, ma'am, Mitchell responds with barely concealed satisfaction. She'd endured years of harassment from Whitmore's clique, watching them destroy community relations while hiding behind badges. The crowd of remaining officers disperses like smoke, each man suddenly remembering urgent duties elsewhere. Cars start and pull away with unusual haste. The brotherhood that seemed so solid minutes ago evaporates under the heat of accountability. Mrs. Ruby Jefferson approaches Victoria with careful steps, her weathered hands extended in greeting. Child, I never thought I'd live to see this day. Your grandmother would be so proud. Victoria accepts the older woman's embrace, feeling the weight of generational struggle in her arms. Mrs. Jefferson, this is just the beginning. Real change takes time. Time we got, Mrs. Jefferson replies with a knowing smile. Lord knows we've been patient long enough. The news reporter positions herself for the money shot Victoria standing where Rosa Parks once stood, holding the badges of suspended officers while the Confederate monument looms in the background. The visual metaphor writes itself. Chief Washington, the reporter calls out, what message do you have for the community after what they witnessed today? Victoria looks directly into the camera, knowing her words will be replayed thousands of times across social media and news networks. Today, Montgomery took a step toward the police department our community deserves. Officers who cannot treat all citizens with dignity and respect have no place wearing our badge. Behind her, Whitmore climbs into his personal truck, no longer entitled to drive a department vehicle. His Confederate flag bumper stickers seem faded now, relics of a worldview that just met reality. Neighbors who once cheered his tough-on-crime approach now film his humiliation from their front porches. Captain Morrison walks to his sedan like a man heading to his own execution. His wife will hear about this on Facebook before he gets home. His retirement party, scheduled for next month, will become a whispered scandal instead of a celebration. Lieutenant Mitchell coordinates the scene cleanup with professional efficiency. Evidence bags secure the planted knife. Witness contact information gets collected. Body camera footage from all present officers gets impounded immediately. The civilian crowd begins to disperse, but not before exchanging phone numbers and social media handles. They know they witnessed history. Some head straight to their churches to share the news. Others call family members across the country. Reverend King shakes Victoria's hand with both of his own. Chief, you've got the prayers of every church in Montgomery, but you also got their attention. Don't let us down. I won't, Reverend. That's a promise. The morning sun climbs higher, burning off the last of the dew. The parking lot returns to normal activity as shift changes proceed. But everything has changed now. The old Montgomery police culture died in the Alabama heat, and something new was born in its place. Victoria walks toward the building that is now truly hers to command, carrying the weight of history and the hope of a community on her shoulders. 2 weeks later, the parking lot incident exploded into a national phenomenon. The video, now viewed 15 million times, becomes a cultural touchstone. Late-night comedians dissect Whitmore's Confederate pin falling into Morrison's spilled coffee. Civil rights scholars analyze the historical parallels. International news outlets cover it as a symbol of American racial progress. FBI Special Agent Carmen Rodriguez arrives at Montgomery headquarters with a team of federal investigators. Her briefcase contains 3 years of citizen complaints, excessive force reports, and discriminatory arrest data. The parking lot incident wasn't an aberration. It was the inevitable exposure of systematic corruption. Chief Washington, Agent Rodriguez announces in Victoria's new office, "We're opening a federal civil rights investigation into both officers and the department's culture. This morning's events provide probable cause for criminal charges." Victoria nods grimly as she reviews Whitmore's personnel file. 15 citizen complaints in 12 years, 19 excessive force incidents. Arrest demographics that read like a roadmap of racial profiling. His social media history reveals heritage pride posts that barely disguise white supremacist ideology. The investigation moves with federal efficiency. Computer forensics uncovered deleted racist text messages between department officers. Financial audits reveal overtime fraud schemes. Body camera footage, previously lost or corrupted, suddenly resurfaces from backup servers. 3 days later, FBI agents arrest Whitmore at his home. His neighbors watch from their windows as handcuffs click around wrists that once held authority over others. The local news captures his perp walk in high definition, the same man who planted evidence now facing federal civil rights charges. "Caleb Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to deprive citizens of their constitutional rights under color of law," Agent Rodriguez announces. "You have the right to remain silent." Captain Morrison's arrest follows 48 hours later. Federal marshals find him at his fishing cabin, trying to delete files from his personal computer. His lawyer arrives too late. The evidence of systematic cover-ups fills 3 cardboard boxes. The Montgomery Courthouse, the same building where civil rights lawyers argued desegregation cases in the 1960s, became the stage for 21st century justice. U.S. District Judge Patricia Collins, a black woman appointed during the Obama administration, presides with quiet authority. Whitmore's trial unfolds like a masterclass in institutional racism. Prosecutors present body camera footage showing his pattern of targeting black citizens. Data analysts testify about his arrest statistics, 300% above departmental averages for African American stops. The planted knife becomes Exhibit A. Forensic analysis reveals Whitmore's fingerprints and DNA, but none from Victoria. Store receipts trace its purchase to a gas station Whitmore frequented. The evidence tampering is so blatant it insults the intelligence of anyone with functioning eyes. Victoria's testimony electrifies the courtroom. Wearing her dress uniform, she recounts not just the parking lot incident, but the systematic harassment that made it inevitable. Her voice remains steady as she describes Whitmore's whispered threat. "You forgot your place." That phrase, Victoria tells the jury, represents everything wrong with American policing. The belief that some citizens have places that others can enforce through violence and intimidation. Whitmore's defense attorney attempts damage control. "My client made mistakes, but criminal intent requires..." Judge Collins interrupts sharply. "Counselor, I watched the video. So did the rest of America. Your client's intent is crystal clear." Character witnesses line up to testify against Whitmore. Mrs. Dorothy Hayes describes how he stopped her grandson 12 times in 6 months, always finding reasons to search, but never to arrest. Reverend James Wilson recounts Whitmore's harassment of churchgoers during a peaceful voting rights commemoration. The prosecution's expert witness, a former FBI profiler, dissects Whitmore's psychology with clinical precision. The defendant exhibits classic patterns of authoritarian personality disorder combined with racial animus and institutional enablement. He didn't act alone. He acted within a system that rewarded his behavior. Social media coverage turns the trial into a cultural moment. #Justice for Montgomery trends globally. International news crews broadcast from the courthouse steps. The same location where segregationists once rallied now hosts justice advocates from around the world. Morrison's trial proceeds separately but follows similar patterns. His 30-year career becomes a catalog of corruption evidence tampering, false reports, coordinated harassment campaigns against minority officers. The good old boy network that protected him for decades crumbles under federal scrutiny. The jury deliberates for less than 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Whitmore faces conspiracy, civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice charges. Morrison's convictions include racketeering under the federal RICO statute, treating the police department like an organized criminal enterprise. Sentencing day arrives with the weight of history. Judge Collins addresses a packed courtroom that includes civil rights veterans, community leaders, and national media. Her words echo across decades of struggle for accountability. Mr. Whitmore, you took an oath to protect and serve all citizens equally. Instead, you used your badge as a weapon against the very people you swore to protect. Her voice carries the moral authority of the federal bench. Your actions weren't just criminal, they were an assault on the Constitution itself. Whitmore receives 2 years in federal prison, plus 3 years supervised probation. His police certification is permanently revoked. More painfully, he loses his pension and health benefits. 23 years of service erased by his own racism. Judge Collins saves her harshest words for Morrison. Captain, you weren't just a participant, you were an enabler. Your rank and experience make your crimes more egregious, not less. She sentences him to 3 years federal imprisonment plus forfeiture of all pension benefits. The courtroom erupts in applause before Judge Collins's gavel restores order. Mrs. Ruby Jefferson weeps openly, the same tears she shed at the original March on Washington, but now tears of vindication rather than sorrow. Victoria watches from the gallery as both men are led away in shackles. She thinks about Rosa Parks, who never lived to see this kind of accountability. She thinks about her grandfather, who endured police harassment without recourse. She thinks about all the black officers who faced similar treatment but never had federal power backing their dignity. The civil lawsuit follows quickly. Victoria sues both officers and the city for $2.3 million in damages. The settlement negotiations last exactly 47 minutes. Montgomery's insurance company pays immediately rather than risk a jury trial where the video would replay again. More importantly, the consent decree mandates sweeping reforms. Every officer must undergo bias training. Community oversight becomes mandatory. Hiring practices must reflect demographic reality. Body cameras become permanent with footage stored on federal servers. The ripple effects spread across the South. Other police departments preemptively remove Confederate imagery and implement bias training. Officers with Whitmore's profile social media posts, complaint patterns, discriminatory statistics, find themselves under internal investigation. Federal prosecutors announce they're reviewing similar cases nationwide. The Montgomery model becomes a template for accountability. What started with one woman standing her ground in a parking lot becomes a nationwide reckoning with police impunity. 1 year later, Victoria stands in the same parking lot where history pivoted on a humid Alabama morning. The Confederate monument across the street has been replaced with a bronze statue of Rosa Parks, her hand extended in quiet dignity. The inscription reads, "She sat so we could stand." The Montgomery Police Department bears little resemblance to its former self. 43% of officers are now minorities, the highest percentage in Alabama. Crime rates have dropped 28% as community trust rebuilds. Use of force incidents have declined by 60% since new training protocols took effect. Detective Keisha Johnson, once harassed by Whitmore's clique, now runs the Community Relations Division. At 29, she represents the department's new generation. Educated, diverse, committed to constitutional policing rather than cultural warfare. "Chief, we got another delegation from Mississippi wanting to tour our facilities," Detective Johnson reports with pride. That's the fourth this month. Victoria smiles at the irony. Montgomery, once synonymous with segregation, now exports police reform expertise across the South. The Montgomery model has been adopted in 43 cities nationwide. Federal grants flow to departments willing to embrace accountability over tradition. Mrs. Ruby Jefferson, now 84, visits headquarters weekly. She brings homemade cookies for officers and stories from the original civil rights movement. Her presence reminds everyone that progress requires both courage and persistence. "Child," Mrs. Jefferson tells Victoria during one of their coffee sessions, "when I was your age, black folks couldn't even walk into this building without permission. Now you run it." "We run it together," Victoria corrects gently. Community policing means exactly that, community. The trials transformed public discourse about police accountability. Whitmore serves his sentence at a federal facility in Georgia, teaching literacy classes to inmates as part of his rehabilitation program. Prison changed him in ways that badge and authority never could. His letters to Victoria, requesting forgiveness, remain unanswered but acknowledged. Morrison's fall was harder. His wife divorced him. His pension vanished with his convictions. Former colleagues crossed the street to avoid contact. He works construction now, his hands building instead of destroying. Some say prison humbled him. Others believe he simply learned to hide his hatred better. The social media impact continues rippling outward. The original parking lot video, now viewed over 50 million times globally, appears in criminal justice textbooks and police academy curricula. International human rights organizations cite it as evidence of American racial progress. Victoria's Harvard lecture series, Policing in the 21st Century, draws standing room-only crowds. Her TED Talk, The Badge and the Constitution, has been translated into 17 languages. Foreign police delegations visit Montgomery to study her reforms. But the real measure of success lives in community relationships. Children wave at patrol cars instead of hiding. Parents call the police for help instead of avoiding contact. Churches partner with precincts on youth programs. The us versus them mentality that poisoned Montgomery for generations gives way to collaborative public safety. National recognition follows achievement. Victoria receives the FBI Director's Community Leadership Award. The NAACP honors her with their highest distinction. Time magazine names her one of the 100 most influential people for transforming American policing. Yet challenges remain. Federal oversight continues for 3 more years. Some officers resist new protocols. Budget constraints limit reform pace. Change is never linear, never complete, never guaranteed. Victoria addresses these realities during her monthly community meetings. She speaks honestly about setbacks and honestly about progress. Transparency builds trust more than perfection ever could. Reform isn't a destination, she tells packed auditoriums. It's a daily commitment to constitutional principles and human dignity. The parking lot where everything changed now hosts the annual Montgomery Police Community Partnership Awards. Last month, Officer Billy Ray Cooper, who once participated in Victoria's harassment, received recognition for his work with homeless veterans. People change when systems change. Systems change when leaders demand it. Leaders emerge when communities support them. Victoria's grandmother's grave bears fresh flowers each Sunday after church. 3 generations of Washington women rest beneath Alabama soil, their dreams finally realized in their granddaughter's achievement. The bronze Rosa Parks statue across the street catches morning sunlight, casting long shadows toward the police building. Past and present intersect on Montgomery streets, reminding everyone that progress requires both memory and action. Victoria's voice carries across time and space as she addresses viewers directly. That morning in the parking lot, I could have revealed my identity immediately. I chose to endure humiliation because exposure requires evidence. Real change demands real courage. Her eyes hold the weight of history and the hope of progress. When you witness injustice, you have three choices: record it, report it, or walk away. Your choice matters more than you think. She pauses, letting the words settle. Share this story if you believe justice is worth the wait. Subscribe to Black Soul Stories for more stories where accountability triumphs over impunity. Like this video, if you believe all Americans deserve equal protection under the law. And remember, when you see someone being judged by their appearance rather than their character, will you be the person who speaks up or the person who stays silent? Your voice shapes the future. Use it.